Okay, third time lucky. This is twice now I have stuffed up the recording in creating this video that I'm doing today, which is on language and some common terms or phrases that are used during women's pregnancy or birth or postpartum experiences, and that is unhelpful and often disempowering. Um, and sometimes just inaccurate and undermining of physiology. Yeah, so let's get right into it for the third time. um, so, the first word I want to talk about is the use of the term deliver when, say, a health professional, a midwife, a doula, a doctor says that they delivered a baby today. Um, you know, oh, I delivered three babies this week or whatever. They didn't do the delivering. They might have caught the baby as it was being born, which is an incredible privilege, and I hope that was discussed with the birthing woman beforehand, and that she had um, chosen for that person to be the one to catch her baby, and that she had been encouraged to do that herself, preferably, or for her partner to do that, because yeah, it is an important time. It's an incredible honour, and we really shouldn't be putting our hands on somebody else's newborn baby unless it's absolutely necessary. It should be the mum or the dad that receive their own baby. Okay, so yeah, women deliver their babies, they give birth to their babies. Someone else might catch the baby, but to say, I delivered a baby when you weren't the birthing person, puts a whole lot of power with you when all of the credit and power and props should be given to the person who just did the incredible job of growing and labouring and birthing her baby. Okay? So, yeah, if you're someone who's been used to using that term, I really encourage you to rethink it. Um, yeah, and we see this in the headlines too, right? Dad delivers baby at roadside. Um, where was the mum in all this, right? Like, yeah, good job, Dad. You put your hands there at the right time and caught the baby. But think about the mum in that process, and why isn't the focus on her? All right, next one is the use of the term empower when we are working as a birth professional, doulas, midwives who say, I empower my clients, or part of my role is to empower the women I work with. And again, when we think about the sort of the power dynamics at play here, that terminology suggests that the power sits with the midwife or the doula, and she gives that power to her clients, right? So she's kind of putting herself up here and her client here, and my client needs me to give her something that I have that she doesn't. I know the intentions are good. I understand, that that the desire to empower our clients is a good thing. But I just think the way that we word it needs to be different because it sets a different tone and a different impression for the person who's hearing that language, and it does shift those power dynamics. So instead, we can say, in my practice, I support women to be empowered in their experience, or I support women to, access their power, or yeah, something along those lines. And I mean, even as a student midwife back many years ago now, yeah, when I was maybe 21 and having to write my philosophy of midwifery care as a final piece of my training, I remember being uncomfortable with this terminology. I'd kind of heard it a lot, and I liked the meaning behind it, but I knew it wasn't right. It didn't fit to say in my practice I will empower my clients, and I think I worded it something like, I would like to support my clients to feel empowered through, helping them to enact their right to informed decision making and consent, or whatever. I should actually pull it out. I've got it in my hard copy of that philosophy of midwifery care that I wrote all those decades ago in my filing cabinet. Have an actual read of what I wrote. So empower. Another one is the use of the term healer. So a lot of us who are in healing roles would refer to ourselves as healers. And I'm sure I do occasionally refer to myself as a birth trauma healer, for kind of ease of understanding for the person on the receiving end, because they kind of get that language, right? But it's problematic because, again, it is describing something that is not the reality, not the truth, and is somewhat disempowering for the person who's on the receiving end of that language. So instead, I call myself a birth trauma support worker generally. What am I getting at here? What's wrong with calling myself a healer? I don't heal. We cannot heal other people. Healing is an internal thing. It is something that we achieve for ourselves. We are all our own healers. And people who are in the healing sort of professions, or in a healing role, they provide, as I do, perhaps like the tools and understandings, the information to help clients to see things through a different lens, or to understand physiology in a different way, to understand why their birth might have gone the way that it did, or why they've been left feeling the ways that they do about their experience. These are all things that help them to access their own inner healer, right? I'm not healing them, I'm supporting them to access their own healing. They're the ones who have to do the work. They're the ones who have to practice those tools, or to vulnerably and courageously share their stories, and in order to access their own inner healer. And we all have it there. Being mindful of that term. Referring to pregnant women as patients, or birthing women as patients. A patient is somebody who is sick and in need of medical support, medical help. Most pregnant women and birthing women are not sick and in need of medical help. So let's stop referring to them as patients. Of course, sometimes they become patients, sometimes they do need medical support, sometimes they do become sick. But that's the minority. So we should not be referring to healthily pregnant, healthily birthing women as patients. And actually, this was one of the things that I loved when I was a midwife. I didn't have a clinic. I used to go and visit my clients in their homes for their, antenatal appointments, and it made it it normalized a very normal, healthy experience, which is that of, growing a baby. Yeah. So I didn't like the idea of somebody kind of coming into a clinical kind of medical, in any sense of the word, environment, because that was medicalizing, perhaps even just subconsciously, or sometimes quite overtly in some sort of clinical settings, a non-medical kind of experience, right? Yeah. So please don't refer to pregnant or birthing women as patients. Some other, I'm just looking at my little notes here. Some other words, language that I want to talk about is words or phrases that are kind of sometimes outright sort of falsities. Is falsities a word? Not sure. I'm talking about language, and I'm not sure if I'm even using a real word. But falsities, I'm going to use it. I think it's probably a word. Falsities that undermine physiology in labour and birth or pregnancy, and set women up to kind of mistrust their bodies, or which is not helpful. Things like, saying, a midwife perhaps saying, I want to do a vaginal examination just to check how far along you are. Now, unpacking stuff around vaginal examinations is going to be another video episode, because there's a crap ton that I could speak to on that topic, and I intend to, and I will. But let's just take this one piece of the vaginal exam sort of terminology, which is this implication that through checking cervical dilation, we can determine how far along in her labour a woman is, and then predict how much longer she has to go. A vaginal examination, checking how dilated somebody's cervix is a snapshot in time, and it is not a magical looking glass. It cannot tell us how much longer she has to go, and often it is really unhelpful to try and make these predictions. It messes with the psychology of, the labouring woman's experience. So she might, be told that she's only 3 centimetres dilated, and usually that word only is put in front, right? Like, in other words, is you've got ages to go. And she could be holding her baby in her arms half an hour later. She might be told that she's almost there. She's 8 centimetres or she's 9 centimetres dilated. And 24 hours later, she might still not have her baby in her arms. So, cervixes aren't magical looking glasses. They give some information. They can sometimes be helpful. Having a vaginal exam can sometimes be an important tool for establishing a number of things when there are concerns going on. But just using them as a tool to assess progress and to predict how much longer a woman has to go is kind of, not overly accurate, helpful, and can sometimes be actually, really unhelpful and really disempowering, really fear-inducing, and quite frequently very needlessly so. The use of the term overdue when somebody has gone past their expected date of delivery or estimated day of delivery, right? We don't know a baby's due date until after they're born. We don't know. They are due whenever your body spontaneously goes into labour. Your body goes into labour when all the conditions are right for you and your baby to begin the labouring process and to meet each other in love, in healthy and positive, supportive ways. To minimize the importance of that physiology. And it's, there is just so much that's going on hormonally and physically and probably emotionally and spiritually and psychologically for the mum and for the baby, that contribute to this being the right moment for them to be born. Can't be expressed enough. It's really important that we don't override that, or we don't minimize the importance of that. Again, definitely another video, another topic to talk about inducing and going overdue. So if we're going to use that term, let's use air quotes with it, because the air quotes say, I'm using this term because you know what I mean when I say it, but I'm acknowledging that it's kind of a bullshit term with the air quotes. Natural induction methods. There's no such thing, right? Induction is anti-nature. The natural thing is to wait for our bodies and our babies to decide their birth date. An induction is an induction. It's forcing the body, or attempting to force the body to birth the baby before the body and the baby are ready. If we are trying to force something, then we are going against nature. So even if it's a non-medical form of induction, whether that's through having a stretch and sweep, or through eating lots of pineapple, or having a hot curry and hot sex, or having acupuncture, or any number of things that, drinking castor oil, that we are doing to try and bring on our labour, we are trying to override nature. We are attempting to perform an induction. There are no natural ways to bring on labour, because the natural way is to wait for nature to do its thing, which is baby will be born when mum and baby are ready for that. Failure to progress almost brings vomit up in my throat to use that term, because just so many women who I work with who have experienced birth as traumatic have a belief that they failed in their birth, and that their body failed them, or that they failed themselves, or they failed their babies. And it's terminology like failure to progress that gets used all the time, and is written in women's birth notes, and is the reason given for that, syntocin or pitocin augmentation, or that caesarean section, etc. That terminology, failure to progress, puts the blame with the birthing woman and her body. It implies that her body was doing something wrong, or wasn't doing something that it ought to have been doing. Again, another video that I'll do on failure to progress, and how this is actually an appropriate response for the woman's body to stop her labour or to slow her progress when she is in an unsafe space. And that, it's not her body failing her. It's not her being a failure. So we need to be mindful of this sort of language and the impacts, and the very long-term and powerful impacts it can have on a woman's postpartum experience, on her ongoing beliefs about herself as a woman, as a mother, the impacts it can have on any future birth experience that she might have, so on and so forth. And big babies, healthily pregnant women grow a baby that's the perfect size for them. And sometimes, like everything else in our lives, in our pregnancies and labour and births, there's a spectrum of, there's a bell curve of what size the baby is going to be, what the length of, the pushing phase of the labour is going to be, the time frame between giving birth to the baby and the placenta being birthed. All these things sort of sit on this bell curve, right? Where most people, it's this length of time, or it's this size of baby, or whatever the factor is that you're looking at. But there's going to be people who sit on either end of the spectrum who are going to take much longer or much shorter time frames, or they're going to have a much bigger or much smaller baby than the majority. That doesn't mean that this is a pathological situation. It doesn't mean that we ought to be putting fear into them around this being concerning when it's their norm. I think it's really problematic that we've pathologized, especially the big baby scenario, and there are all these people who are having are being encouraged to have, or told to have, or expected to have growth scans near the end of their pregnancies. And, not only are the scans often quite wildly inaccurate in terms of predicting weight, but also how helpful is it for a woman to learn that her baby is bigger than average? especially when that's followed up with stories of your baby might get stuck. You're more likely to experience complications. We need to induce, because if you continue your pregnancy, your baby will only get bigger, and that will increase the likelihood of complications. So, yeah, healthy women grow healthy babies, and let's just sit with the trust that whatever size our baby is the perfect size for them and for us, if we're healthy and we're going through this very healthy stage in our lives of pregnancy and birth. We are well designed to do just that. We're women. All right. Hope you learned something. I hope that if you are somebody who works with, pregnant or birthing women or new mums, that you've learned something here, that you will rethink some of your languaging if you use any of those terms I've talked about, or if you are somebody who's listening who has these terms used on you, that you can either inwardly reframe and, not take on that underlying messaging that I've described, or if you're feeling able to, I'd encourage you to enlighten the person who's using that terminology that is unhelpful as to its unhelpfulness. Cool.